Hello fellow creature, welcome back to Rooftop Talks. I apologise in advance for the planes going overhead. This is that time of day where they all decide to fly directly over my apartment. Over a year ago I took part in a peaceful protest. The purpose of this protest was to criticise UK food companies. It was headed by Joey Carbstrong, great animal activist, and it was criticising major food companies operating in the UK for not being transparent about the means by which they obtain animal-based products. They were not being transparent about how the animals were killed for their food products. They were not being transparent with their customers. So it was a pressure campaign with a very specific goal. Now, I remember sitting at home and weighing up whether to go to this protest. I was nervous about taking part in protests of this kind in the UK, because I didn't want to do anything that would get me in trouble with the law, that would get me arrested or that would get my name taken down. I've always been a very risk-averse person. I do not like to take unnecessary risks in my life, especially ones that are permanent, like something going on my permanent criminal record that could limit opportunities in my future. I might want to talk about veganism in schools in the future. Getting a criminal record would deny me that future. And I'm a very risk-averse person. I have a squeaky clean record. I've never had any trouble with the law. I want it to stay that way. But this protest was something I cared very deeply about. Everything inside me was compelling me to join this protest and lend my voice and my presence to helping that message get heard. I talked to a lad called Rupert Thorpe. He kind of encouraged me through one of his YouTube videos to attend. I thought back to my overall estimation of the temperament of UK metropolitan police officers, and I have to say I had only ever really had positive experiences. I'm pleased to say. That's not to say that there are no negative experiences, but whenever I had seen them, I knew that if the situation called for it, I do not have a problem with authority. I am able to command myself to act rationally in the moment if it comes to that. I already knew going into this that if a police officer instructed me to do something, can you please stand over there, I would do it. I would do it. It's something I cared deeply about, and I think I had to go. I had to go. So reluctantly I did. I joined that protest for the whole week. And I'll always remember that experience. I have stories from that experience. I actually recorded a bunch of stories and I just haven't released them on this channel. And it was great. I'm really glad that I attended. But I think things have been getting worse in the UK over the last 5 years. And it's starting to look like my home country is no longer safe for activists. It's no longer safe for people who want to protest something, whether it's against private enterprises or the government. It's looking like the window for being able to do that safely seems to have been closing. This is very alarming to me. I can no longer say that you can safely exercise some kind of peaceful freedom of speech. Maybe I've got the wrong end of the stick with this news story, but this is what came onto my news recently. An 83-year-old retired priest has been arrested for defying a newly enforced ban on pro-Palestinian group Palestine Action, just hours after the group was formally outlawed by the UK government. The Reverend Sue Parfitt from Bristol was detained for holding a placard that read, quote, "I oppose genocide. I support Palestine Action." She was among more than 27 people arrested on Saturday for acts of defiance against the prescription. So that's the news story that really prompted me to make this video. She's an 83-year-old priest. She could not do any harm to anyone. She held a placard that showed her support for an activist group that was critical of the government for supporting acts of genocide, certain very violent acts. For it to become an arrestable offence for blowing the whistle on crimes your government is involved in, you are living in a totalitarian regime. In the UK, like in the US, it's no longer a free country. It's no longer a country where citizens can freely express political views. The way that the UK government has gone about this is that they have labelled a certain group a terrorist group, which is absurd that graffitiing an aircraft can be seen as an act of terrorism. Give me a fucking break. But they label that group responsible as a terrorist group and then arresting everyone associated with that activism. That's their workaround for this. This is how the government is able to break its own rules and is able to weaponize its police force and its military. You might be thinking at this point, you just read one article, you're an alarmist. You are making a big deal out of something, there's a complicated issue, and no, we do live in a country that respects freedom of speech. You might want to push back on me with this, and that's fair enough, that's fine. But if you are at this point in the video and you're skeptical about whether the UK is a country which allows free speech and free expression of explicitly non-violent, anti-war messages, then I have a simple challenge for you. Stand outside Westminster, holding a sign, and you only have to stand there for an hour, 1 hour. Maybe we'll make it 3 hours or something, just to be fair. If you don't get arrested for holding this sign, I'll eat my words. I'll crawl back into my little hole here on the internet, and I'll be very embarrassed with myself for sounding the alarm. But here's the catch. I get to choose what's written on the sign. And no, I won't write any hate speech. I won't write any incitements of violence. Quite the opposite. It will be words calling for peace and justice and accountability of the government. All you have to do is stand out with the sign for 3 hours. See if you don't get arrested. See if you have your right to free speech interfered with by the authorities. Do you want to take me up on the bet? If you are not willing to take me up on this bet, then you must admit that the UK is facing a very serious problem with the restriction of protests and free speech. This has been happening for years now. The Conservative government actually used the pretense of COVID to crack down on protests, and they have not lifted those laws since, even though we don't now have the pandemic happening. It was the perfect excuse to clamp down on the population, to restrict people's freedom of expression, freedom of protest. It doesn't take a genius to figure out why this bishop was arrested. Great Britain has been quietly aiding the genocide in Gaza. People in the UK pay taxes to the government, and that tax money is being spent on bombs. And the people of the UK, not the government, the people, are not happy about that. And they have a right to protest. Anyone who tries to drag this down into a debate about who has the right over land in the Middle East, I'm not here to talk about that on this channel. I try to dedicate this channel to the animals. The problem I face is that the plight of the animals involves human behavior and human policy. And so it is inevitable that at times I must talk about human behavior and policy to prevent it from impeding on the great work of animal rights activists. This video is not about what's going on in the Middle East. It's about what's going on in the Houses of Parliament. It's about what's going on with the Metropolitan Police. It's about the fact that if I were to be asked now, a year later, would you like to come back and protest against this other issue that's affecting animals, I would be a lot more hesitant. And that is a major, major problem. Freedom of speech really is a vital component to how our society is able to run and navigate in an uncertain world. When we don't have the freedom to be able to hold our government to account, when people get arrested on trumped up charges of terrorism and inciting terrorism, the complete opposite of what they are actually doing, it really spells the end of society's forward progression. Society is taking a U-turn and is moving backwards. We are sliding back into totalitarianism. We can only improve if whistleblowers and activists and citizens have their right to free expression and freedom of speech respected by their government. The government should work for the people. The people shouldn't be working for the government. If you make peaceful protest impossible, you make violent protest inevitable. But also, what do you want your legacy to be as a leader? Do you want to be remembered as a despot? Because people will remember this. People will remember who you censored and why you censored them. Or would you like to be remembered as a man of the people, Keir Starmer? Who would you like to be remembered as? I think right now the UK government should hang their heads in shame when it comes to this. But now I will address people everywhere, people who are not in charge. It must be demonstrated as quickly as possible that the government cannot get away with silencing dissent. The repercussions for this should be felt loudly and immediately. No matter what your agenda might be, no matter what it is you stand for, you stand to lose the right to express it. If we don't come together on this and protest that the government is taking away our right to protest, this comes before everything else. If we lose our right to protest, we lose our right to improving things and shaping the country in the way we want. So we should all be able to agree that we want to live in a society where you are free to speak your mind without fear of persecution. And I don't care what it is you want to say, but I respect your right to say it. And I want to defend your right to say it. Because if you want to get up on stage and say something stupid, that's fine, because there are going to be people like me who will have the urge to get up straight after you and explain why what you just said is stupid. This is a dialogue, and hopefully with enough dialogue, good ideas will win and bad ideas will fade into obscurity. But if you do not stand up for freedom of speech, freedom of protest, freedom of artistic expression, then when it finally comes around to it being your turn to say what you want to say, perhaps you want to protest for the benefit of your children, there will be nobody to speak up for you, because they will either be imprisoned or they will have been conditioned through fear into staying silent. While this channel is about the animals, it seems like securing one's ability to talk openly and freely precedes the discussion of the animals themselves, which is why I have made this video. In the comment section, we can talk about actionable steps we can take, but in general, if you are someone who is trying to protect others' freedom of speech, I respect that and I support you. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.
है ये मोहब्बत कमजोरी मेरी चाहत की दुनिया पे मेरा राज बस रब के आगे झुकता मेरा सर झुकते मेरे सामने तक तो ताज अंदाज मेरा सबसे जुदा मैं बादशाह का बादशाह सपने सजाना हंसना हंसाना बस यही मेरा कसूर वादों से अपने मुकरता नहीं मरने से मैं कभी डरता नहीं